Those blocks on the roof of the king's chamber weigh 70 tons each. Now, Egyptologists will tell you that, they could move heavy blocks.
For centuries, the ruins of Baalbek in Lebanon have left experts speechless. Massive stones were cut and placed with such perfect accuracy that even modern cranes would struggle to move them. The Romans, who always recorded their great works, left no explanation for how these blocks were lifted high into place. For years, the mystery has only deepened. But now, artificial intelligence has studied Baalbek, and its results are shocking.
Anything that was existing on those flooded coastlines has just been pounded to hell. I mean, talk about it.
Could this be the final clue that rewrites everything we thought we knew about ancient builders? Join us in this video as we reveal the details. The shocking structure of Baalbek Megalithic. The old site of Baalbek, found in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, is one of the most shocking and amazing places on Earth. Many people know Baalbek because of its massive Roman temples, such as the Temple of Jupiter and the Temple of Bacchus, which stand as powerful reminders of the skill of Roman builders. But behind the ruins and the stories of Roman culture lies something even more shocking. The base of these temples holds some of the biggest stone blocks ever cut and placed by human hands. Stones so big and heavy that even the latest machines would find it hard to move them. These big stones are called the Baalbek Megaliths, and they have surprised historians, engineers, and visitors for years. The size of the blocks is almost hard to believe. Some weigh close to 800 tons, while others reach 1,500 tons or more. The most famous stone, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, still lies in the quarry near the site and has been estimated at around 1,000 tons. In 2014, archaeologists found an even bigger block, weighing close to 1,650 tons. To see how heavy that really is, imagine 3 fully loaded jumbo jets joined together, or about 300 elephants tied together. These numbers are not only hard to imagine, but also raise a serious question. How could ancient people possibly have moved stones that large? Even the mighty Romans, who built many of the temples at Baalbek and were some of history's greatest engineers, could not have lifted such weights. The most advanced Roman cranes could handle around 300 tons at best. This means the Baalbek stones were 5 times heavier than what Roman machines were meant to lift. This puzzle has caused many talks among experts because the Romans were known for moving big stones in other projects, yet nothing reaches the big blocks found here. Moving the stones without breaking them, sinking into the soil, or causing accidents would have needed serious planning and skill. This is where new technology has entered the story. Now, artificial intelligence has been used to study the surprise of Baalbek in ways that traditional research could not. A supercomputer ran 50,000 different simulations, testing how the stones might have been moved using Roman old tools, manpower, and skills such as ramps or rollers. The result was shocking. Every test failed. None of the old ways could explain how stones this size were moved and lifted into place. But AI also gave new ideas. By running better scenarios, computer models hint that the old builders may have used some designed wooden sledges, mixed with clever use of lubrication such as oils or animal fats, along with earth ramps and pulley systems. Instead of trying to drag the whole block with a lot of strength, the weight could have been spread across a lot of points, reducing pressure on the ground and making movement better. According to these AI-based simulations, a workforce of around 500 to 1,000 skilled laborers, not tens of thousands, might have been able to move even the largest stones if the right techniques were used. These findings do not give us a total answer, but they do change the way we think about the builders of Baalbek. Far from being normal workers with basic tools, they must have been highly skilled engineers and organizers, capable of planning hard operations that needed knowledge of physics, materials, and coordination. The AI analysis shows that old people may have had a better understanding of engineering than we usually believe. The Baalbek megaliths are still one of the greatest puzzles of the old world. Their size and precision continue to surprise, and even with latest science, the full story of how they were moved and placed is still unknown. What is clear, however, is that the builders of Baalbek achieved something great, something that forces us to think again about the limits of old technology and reminds us that many secrets of the past are still waiting to be opened. What do the seamless stonework, the older megalithic base, and the strange legends tell us about the real origins of Baalbek? Let's learn more. Baalbek, the precision, foundations, and myths that defy history. Beneath the Roman temples are stones so huge and placed with such perfection that they raise questions no one has fully answered. One of the greatest puzzles about Baalbek is the unexplained precision of the stonework. The stones sit side by side in such a way that the seams are nearly invisible. Travelers often say that you could not slip even a razor blade between them. For blocks this large, that kind of exact fit seems almost impossible. When we think about how these stones were placed thousands of years ago, the mystery becomes even greater. Today, modern engineers use heavy cranes, laser tools, and advanced machinery to cut and position stone with this kind of accuracy. But the builders of Baalbek had none of those things. This leads to another fascinating part of the mystery: the megalithic foundation beneath the Roman temple. When we look at the Temple of Jupiter, we can see that the base of the structure is completely different from the Roman layers that rise above it. The lower foundation is made of enormous blocks, much larger than anything the Romans ever used in their buildings. These older stones are cut and placed with such accuracy that they seem almost like the work of a different civilization altogether. The Romans clearly built their impressive temples on top of what was already there, but the base itself seems to come from an earlier time, maybe even thousands of years before Rome. The style of building and the big size of the stones do not fit with normal Roman ways. The Romans were great builders, but nothing in their history shows them cutting and moving stones this big. This raises an important question. If not the Romans, then who built the original base of Baalbek? The difference between the Roman structures and the earlier base shows us that Baalbek is more than just a Roman site. It is a place where one civilization built upon the leftover of another. These findings have led many researchers to believe that Baalbek may hold the secrets of an unknown, older world, one that had skills and knowledge that were later lost. Adding to all of this shock are the myths and legends that surround Baalbek. For years, local people have told stories about the site. One of the most common stories is that the giant stones were placed there by giants, sometimes linked with the biblical Nephilim. These were said to be beings of great strength, strong enough to lift stones that no normal human could move. Some stories even say the gods themselves were involved, building Baalbek as a kind of holy or heavenly site. Recent researchers and other historians have also added their own stories. Some, like Graham Hancock, believe Baalbek may be far older than most experts claim. According to these views, the site could be more than 12,000 years old, dating back to a time before written history. If true, this would mean that Baalbek was built not by the Romans, but by a lost world that had better technology and knowledge we do not understand today. Some say this world may have vanished after a world disaster, leaving behind only shocking ruins like those at Baalbek. Whether we look at the perfect stone joints, the big foundation blocks, or the stories of giants and lost worlds, one thing is sure: Baalbek is not a common site. It does not fit neatly into our history books, and it affects the way we think about the past. The shocking precision of its stonework is beyond what we usually link with old builders. The megalithic foundation under the Roman temples points to a world far older than Rome. And the myths and stories remind us that sometimes local stories may keep hints of forgotten truths. To this day, no one can say for sure who first built Baalbek or how they managed to move stones so big and set them with such accuracy. What we do know is that Baalbek will still shock experts and amaze visitors, keeping its secrets hidden in plain sight. It stays as one of the world's greatest mysteries, a place where history, myth, and unanswered questions all meet. If myths and legends cannot fully explain Baalbek's old stones, what has science found about its true origins? Let's delve deeper. Scientific investigations that changed what we know about Baalbek. The ancient ruins of Baalbek, found in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, have always been one of the greatest mysteries in the world. What science has uncovered is that Baalbek was not built by just one civilization. Instead, it has been a sacred place for thousands of years, shaped by many different cultures. The serious study of Baalbek began in 1898, when Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany visited the ruins. His interest led to the first large archaeological project between 1898 and 1904. These excavations revealed that while the Romans did build temples on the site, there were deeper layers of construction that went far back in time. This discovery proved that Baalbek was more than just a Roman city. It was a place with a much longer history. One of the most shocking discoveries came when archaeologists found that people had been living at Baalbek since the Neolithic period, nearly 10,000 years ago. This means the site had been important for human settlement thousands of years before the Romans arrived. If people lived there so long ago, it suggests that the massive stone foundations at Baalbek may have already existed before Roman construction. This also helps explain why the Romans, who were known to record their great achievements, never wrote about the largest stones at Baalbek. They may not have built them at all, but instead found them already in place. More discoveries came in the early 2000s, when the German Archaeological Institute worked together with Lebanese researchers to explore the ancient quarries where the huge stones were cut. In these quarries, archaeologists found Persian pottery fragments dating back to the 6th to 4th centuries BCE. This shows that the Persians were also active at Baalbek centuries before Roman times. Some experts wondered if the Persians could have been responsible for part of the stonework. However, this idea faces problems. The Persians were strong builders, but their projects in places like Persepolis used much smaller blocks, usually between 1 and 20 tons. Nothing in their building history comes close to the 800 to 1,500 ton stones at Baalbek. Another fascinating discovery came from the site itself. Archaeologists found Roman blueprints carved directly into the stone floors. These were not papers or scrolls, but real style marked into the stone of the courtyard. These plans showed the real layouts and detailed measurements. This shows that Roman builders were very organized and carefully planned their temples. It also confirms that many of the visible structures, like the Temple of Jupiter, were Roman creations. But once again, this evidence only explains the temples above, not the giant foundations below. Researchers also noticed something remarkable about the way the podium foundation was built. The style of construction at Baalbek is almost identical to the stonework in Herodian architecture in Jerusalem. Both used the same system of alternating headers and stretchers. Both had the same drafted margin stonework, and both had the same average stone height of about 3.6 feet. These similarities are too exact to be random. They suggest either that Herodian builders helped construct Baalbek, or that builders across the region shared the same advanced techniques. German researcher Margaret van Es made another important finding when she studied how the giant stones were cut. She found out that the old builders were clever enough to cut along natural fissures in the rock. By using these natural weak points, they could free big blocks without breaking them. This was not just luck. It showed a deep knowledge of geology and careful planning. The same technique has been seen in other Roman projects, such as the Pont du Gard aqueduct in France. These investigations prove that Baalbek has many layers of history. It was not simply a Roman site. It was a place where Neolithic settlers, Persians, Herodians, and Romans all left their mark. Each civilization added something, but none of them clearly took responsibility for the big foundation stones. Even with the latest science, the question of who built those big blocks and how they moved them is still not answered. What science has shown is that Baalbek is not a story of just one culture. It is a puzzle that spans thousands of years, from the early Neolithic people who lived there, to the Persians who left behind pottery, to the Romans who carved blueprints into stone. Baalbek tells a long story of human success. Yet the biggest stones, the ones that weigh hundreds of tons, are still unexplained. Scientific findings have given us many new details, but they have also given more surprises. Baalbek still challenges us to think about the skills, knowledge, and focus of old builders who may have known things we have long forgotten. How did Baalbek's big stones, Roman temples, and sacred traditions keep changing the site through time? Let's find out. Layers of Baalbek, from megaliths to temples and sacred traditions. The ruins of Baalbek are not only beautiful, but also filled with history that goes back thousands of years. The site has been used and reused by many different cultures over many years. Each culture left its own mark, sometimes changing the site in small ways, and other times in very big ways. To understand Baalbek better, it helps to look at three important parts of its long story: the megalithic stones and how they were reused in the medieval period, the Roman additions such as the Temple of Venus and the Temple of the Muses, and finally, the wider religious and cultural layout that shows how many gods and traditions were linked to this place. One of the most famous features of Baalbek is its megalithic stones. For thousands of years, people looked at these stones with amazement. However, not all of them remain where they were first placed. During the medieval period, Baalbek was turned into a fortress. The people of that time wanted strong walls and towers to protect themselves, and so they used some of the big megalithic blocks. At least 9 big stones, each around 1,000 tons in weight, were taken out and moved to make the walls and corners of the new fortress stronger. This means that the site we see today is missing many of its megaliths. What remains is still good, but the medieval reuse shows how later generations changed Baalbek to meet their own needs. It also reminds us that history is not frozen. Alongside the megalithic foundations, Baalbek also contains later Roman temples that give it another layer of history. 2 of these are the Temple of Venus and the Temple of the Muses. These were built later than the main Temple of Jupiter, maybe between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD. Unlike the giant stone base, these temples were smaller and more styled. The Temple of Venus had a rounded design, which was not normal for Roman buildings, making it stand out from other temples in the empire. The Temple of the Muses was built to honor the 9 muses, who in Greek and Roman tradition represented the arts, music, and learning. Even though these temples were not as big as the earlier megalithic work, they still showed the cultural power of the Romans. What makes Baalbek even more special is the way its religious and cultural layout shows a long story of changing traditions. Long before the Romans, the site was already sacred. Around 2000 BC, it was used as a sanctuary for Baal-Hadad, a god of fertility and storms. He was often shown with lightning and whips, and was linked with bulls, which symbolized strength and new life. When the Romans arrived, they connected Baal-Hadad with Jupiter, their own chief god, and built the massive Temple of Jupiter on the same sacred ground. This shows how new religions often grew on top of older ones, keeping some of the old traditions alive under new names. Baalbek was also connected to powerful goddesses. The goddess Astarte, linked with love and fertility, was worshipped here in earlier times. Later, she became connected to Greek and Roman goddesses like Artemis and Aphrodite. Other figures, such as Adonis and even Apollo, also became part of the site's religious story. In this way, Baalbek was not just a place for one god or one religion. The result of all this is that Baalbek became a site that is always used for thousands of years. From Neolithic settlers to Phoenicians to Romans and later medieval rulers, each group saw Baalbek as a place of importance. Some came for worship, some for power, and others simply reused its stones for protection. Today, Baalbek is recognized as one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites in the world because it is not just from one time. It is a place where different eras and different peoples left their marks, one on top of another. From the missing megaliths to the Roman shrines, from ancient fertility gods to wine gods, Baalbek tells the story of a sacred site that was never forgotten and never abandoned. What do you think about the mystery of the megalithic stones? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.